Welcome back to another episode of Meredyth with a Y. I am your host, Meredyth Willits, and today I have Diane Christiansen on the show. I've been up since 4 a.m. prepping for this interview. I'm so excited to talk to her about her new book. Oh my gosh, The Last Real Showgirl. I cannot wait to dive in with her, so stay with us. Where did it go? Hello, everyone. This is Meredyth with a Y, and I am your host, Meredyth Willits. Today, we are going to go deep, changing lives, and I am giving you the keys to the castle. Of course, I hit the ellipsis instead of the actual button to get us music. Thank you for being here this afternoon.
It's wonderful to be here, Meredyth. Thank you for the invite.
This book has everything. It's got sex. It's got drugs. It's got rock and roll. It's got Mick Jagger. It's got Elvis Presley. It's got Ike and Tina Turner. It's got LSD. I am so here for this damn book. It's so good.
And it's got Prince and Earth, Wind, and Fire.
It's insane. Yes. I mean, girl, woman, queen, you've done it all. I was living vicariously through you, this book. I was even a little sassy with my husband today because I'm like, I'm going to Paris. I'm going to Vegas. I'm going to Montreal. I'm going to Bahamas. What? How did you know?
I love that.
I mean, literally. So I'm currently in Chicagoland.
Oh, that's where I'm from.
Yes. So as I'm reading about this 17-year-old girl leaving Rock Island, Illinois, and doing the thing as a virgin, literally schlepping up to Canada by herself, literally. What, where did you find that strength and courage?
I started finding it very young. I knew by the time I was 12 years old that it would be Splitsville for me, and I made a formal announcement to my family at 12. I remember being at Sunday dinner one day and standing up and saying, "I want to tell you all something. I'm going to be leaving to be an actress when I'm 18, and I just want you to get ready." And my dad's like, "Sit down, eat your dinner." But it meant everything to me, and I was very clear at 12. And I actually started dance training at 13. I'm not one of those girls that started at 3 years old or 5 years old.
Yeah.
I had to wait until I had my own money to pay for classes. So
because you paid for your own dance lessons.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was the only way it was gonna happen with 5 kids and really young parents. Parents who had 5 kids by the time they were 30. So, if you can imagine that. So being the oldest and being one of the caretakers, I knew I had to figure it out. I had to figure it out. And I did. I was very resourceful at a very young age. And I think that if I had had a cushy, easy childhood, that would not have happened. So in retrospect, I know how as we grow and evolve as souls, we look back and we go, yeah, I probably chose those people so that I could do what I needed to do to fulfill my creative aspirations in this lifetime. So
because there's so many people that would have been in your experience. So you're the oldest sister of 4 brothers, 5 total, young parents.
Yes.
Middle class, Illinois upbringing. There's so many people that would have followed in the parents' steps, got pregnant at 17, 18, stayed in Illinois, but you didn't. You had that backbone. You didn't let it go. You followed your dream, and you didn't live your life to be the good girl. You were not the good girl. You did what you wanted to do.
Yeah, even though I would say in retrospect, I have been the good girl.
Yeah.
I've been the girl that decided to do everything that you were supposed to do to make things happen, including getting this book published. It's not easy being published these days. It's not like the old days where they come in and they give you a big advance. You work hard to get a publisher these days. So that's why the book took 20 years. But you know what? I can't explain being resourceful. All I can explain is I think the grist of my mill was that I had a turbulent childhood and I
Mhm.
had a difficult childhood. And so much so that by the time I was 17, 18, I was ready to go live my life. I had sacrificed and given and given and given to this family until it hurt.
Yeah.
And I was already tired by 12.
Yeah. You're the
I was
oldest
already
daughter, I'm the oldest daughter.
so you know?
Um, yeah, so I heard I saw a lot of I did the other route. I did the pregnant at 23 route.
Yeah,
So it was painful to read your book because I'm like, "Damn, look at her go. Holy shit."
it
But
wasn't
at
easy. It wasn't
the
easy.
same time, I'm like, "Damn, like, look at her go." Like, she
Yeah,
did the thing, like, and she did
yeah,
it so and I love what I've learned the word courageous instead of fearless
yeah,
because there's so many points in this book where I know, with tears streaming down your face on the side of
yeah,
the stage,
yeah,
did have the fear, but
yeah,
found the courage. And
yeah.
in that, I mean, that right there, there's a moment in this book where you're on the side of stage, literally being like pushed onto the stage. And you found your courage inside of that moment of fear. And that to me, with tears streaming down your face, that just changed me. This
Oh. Well, you
so
know what? That's my favorite thing that I hear from people, Meredith, is people read the book and they'll say, "Oh, I loved your story about Blaze. Oh, I loved the Sugar Bowl story. Oh, I was so related to when you became a showgirl." Everybody has a point in the book that they can really relate to, whether they're in show business or not.
oh
And
that
that's my favorite feedback is that
okay,
somebody went, "Oh, I could
the
relate
sugar
to
bowl, the sugar bowl. I had a sugar bowl moment and didn't know the sugar bowl moment.
this."
My friends were having a party 2 doors down. I was
Yeah,
a single mom. I had just moved into this house. They were having a party 2 doors down, and
yeah,
I literally stood at my back door. You're everything if I would have just had a little chutzpah and a little bit more imagination. And I stood at that back door. My friend Paula, if you're listening, you know this story. And I watched them having fun back there, but I didn't know how to get there.
yeah,
And you looked around your apartment, you're like, "How am I gonna get in this darn party
yeah,
in
and
my
I just
building?" And
moved
you're
in.
like,
Well,
"Sugar."
it seemed like a logical col obviously, it was perfect because I'm still friends with them. I'm still friends with Leo and Larry. So, that says everything. That was destiny. I am certain because they were living guardian angels. I mean, I was so young, I was 18. So, to have them in my life at that juncture, somebody who's not in the business, not some, girl backstage who's judging me or not judging me or, calling me names. It was the greatest blessing of my life to make best friends in my building that looked out for me like I was their child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love in the book too, one thing that I noticed that was super, inspiring to me as a woman
Mhm.
is the way that your interaction with other women who should have been your competition or they were your competition. But there was the way that you describe it, and I don't know if this is in hindsight because you said, like, you're writing this today, you're not writing it at 19, which is one of my questions that I have for you in a moment.
Yeah.
You you saw them as mentors, you saw them as sisters, you saw them as friends, you saw the good in them, which I think a lot of other women as a showgirl vying for a position might not have seen or absorbed those women in the way that you've described them in your book.
It's quite a sisterhood. You know, I think that, because of the intimate nature of our work, I think and because we're together a lot, we worked a lot. 2 shows a night, 3 on Saturdays, most places, 7 nights a week in Paris.
Yeah.
Uh, Everywhere that I worked, it became one way or another a sisterhood. And I'm not excluding the show boys at all because they're a huge part of that. But the majority of the people I worked with were other women, and they were accomplished, classically trained dancers in coveted jobs. Those were coveted jobs. And to know that no matter what, we had one another's backs. And that was one of my first experiences with that first roommate that had 3 of us staying in her apartment. That
Yes.
was one of my first experiences is, you keep people's secrets, you learn right away that you just are a support system for one another. So, and I think that's my natural nature. I think that my friends, going all the way back to my friends back in Rock Island, there's the only 2 of the 4 of us are still alive, sadly, but, they're still my best friends. So I found sisterhood in the '60s at a very young age, and it's one of the greatest treasures of my life, and it's certainly maintained throughout my life. So, obviously, the story of my cohort, my best friend Barbara, throughout the
Barbara.
book, Barbara Beverly, a legend in the dance world,
Yeah.
still exists today. We're 30 minutes from one another and have gone through every aspect of our lives together. So that's my touchstone, my best
Yeah.
friend for life,
Yeah, and
for
you've
life.
got some beautiful pictures throughout the book of the 2 of you together. You have a beautiful photo of her, towards the middle of the book. She just looks like
Oh,
a
she's
gypsy.
a
I
goddess,
mean,
just gorgeous.
breathtaking, and you have the most beautiful photos. One of which every time I read multiple pair of lashes, I'm like, "I don't even know how to put on 1 pair of lashes, and this woman's wearing multiple pairs of la." I just kept
Stage
trying and
makeup.
envision.
Yeah. My four-year-old granddaughter saw the cover of the book and she said, "Oh, grandma, what's wrong with your eyes? There are spiders on your eyes."
I
I said,
love
"Honey,
that
that's stage makeup.
I
Stage
love
makeup."
that so much. One of
Oh,
one thing as I was going through the book, again, just it's out now. I got mine on Amazon. Order it today.
thank you. Thank you.
Um, One of the words that kept coming to me throughout every story, it didn't matter what it was. It could have been dancing, it could have been friendship, it could have been an amazing LSD trip up in Quebec. Men especially.
Well,
The
learning
word that
about
kept
our
coming through to me about you is discipline.
uh-huh, that's right.
You have been disciplined clearly since 12, but your story to me showed such discipline and also self awareness.
Yeah.
There's a self awareness and discipline in your story, and I would assume then, therefore, in your life that struck me that you were not going to be led around by your nose for any reason by anyone. You knew who you were, you
Mhm,
knew what you were worth, you knew what you wanted it to feel like, to look like, how it was going to be. And just because a boy liked you, just because someone, even your bestest friend being in the Bahamas,
mhm,
or a really good girlfriend in Paris,
mhm.
you were gonna do what you were gonna do, and you weren't gonna stay because your friend asked you to,
Yeah,
period.
yeah.
That is discipline. That is self-worth. That is loyalty to self.
That's true. I never put it in that framework. Loyalty to self. I feel like it's all been a journey to the center of the self, everything in my life, and that's why I shared a truthful story about a showgirl in the first place, because we're people, and very disciplined people, I might add.
Oh,
Nobody without discipline gets those jobs because it's rigorous and it takes a toll, and you have to be prepared.
yeah.
So I think that yes, discipline is at the center of my being, but I think that oh gosh, that started so young, Meredith. That was such a young thing. I mean, anybody that approaches dance classes the way that I did at 13, taking 3 classes a week and 1 private lesson a week, and knowing that I wanted to be ready to audition for the Rockettes by the time I was 17, that takes discipline. I think that was the most disciplined time of my life because I pushed myself harder and further. And interestingly, this is really interesting. You're gonna like this. This isn't in the book. In order to have photos in the book, my publisher requires a signed document from anyone in those photos unless it's a publicity photo, like of Siegfried and Roy or the Puppet People or, Leclerc or one of those publicity photos. So I had to track down the people that I in the photos that I wanted to use, including my first husband who is gone. Couldn't find any of his family to sign off on a photo of him.
Wow.
Couldn't find anybody to sign off on half the photos I wanted to use because all those boys are gone. The 2
Yeah.
boys in the shows that are in the book in photos couldn't even use a picture of Blaze, he's gone. Couldn't get anybody in his family to I mean, it was work.
Yeah.
But the one person that I really reconnected with after 50 years was Karen Darnell, who I auditioned for the Rockettes with, my dance pal, Karen, who was
Karen.
called and went to the Rockettes. 3 months after we auditioned, she got called in July. She was in the show by August. She had just gone into the show when Russell Marquardt, the original creator of the Rockettes,
Yeah.
called her into his office and he said, "Karen," she just told me this within the last year when she signed off on her photos. She said, he called me into his office and he said, "Karen, I called your mentor for Diane to come up and be on the line today. And the mentor said she couldn't vouch for her skills and is sending someone else."
Stop.
Do you know how that affected me? After all these years of honoring her, putting her on a pedestal, looking up to her like a goddess.
And you did so many things to put your life on hold all that time to go
I
to the
sacrificed
Rockettes.
I sacrificed a lot.
I mean, I held my breath waiting for you to get that damn call.
I know, and
I'm
it
like,
would
"Okay,
have
any
been
minute now." I thought you were
so
gonna get called first.
no, she was gonna get called first. That was agreed upon. And
Okay.
she did, and she was an extraordinary dancer who had been with our mentor since she was 3. The girl that the mentor sent in my place had been with her since she was 3. She was in one of my tap classes, her name was Ellen, and she only lasted 2 weeks because Karen said she was terrible, and Karen had no way of reaching me at that time. She was going into the show, she was deep in rehearsals, doing 4 shows a week. We had lost touch, and I was called.
Wow.
But you know what, Meredith, I think in retrospect, I wouldn't have been happy there. I wouldn't have
Everything works out.
I wouldn't have been happy doing 4 shows a day, 7 days a week, and being just exactly like everybody else in the line. It
Yep.
just I think that this Leo needed to shine a little bit
Yeah.
more than that.
Yeah. And again, back to the discipline though of having to tell those 2 shows that you were signed up for the summer. This
That
is
was
I mean,
heartbreaking.
this is back when you were
17?
17 and you had to tell I mean, these are roles that you wanted, you were
I had
coveting.
dreamed of being Ado Annie in Oklahoma since I was 8 years old, and
Yeah,
I first saw the show,
and you got it,
and I got it.
and now you're gonna go to New York. They're gonna call you at any minute. You're gonna be a Rockette.
I'm on call.
Every I mean, that's the Super Bowl of dance, right? Like, that's
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
And they said, "You're gonna have to bow out of those shows because we could call you any second,"
Yeah,
and no phone call, and now you find out how many
it
years
was.
later the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I know it's wild. It's a wild ride getting older.
I know.
It
It's
is
not for the faint at heart.
no, it's not for sissies, and it's a
It's
luxury, and not everybody has the luxury of getting older, but truly one of the greatest experiences of my age is being able to have these full circle moments
yeah.
where if I had not done this and talked to Karen and reconnected, I would never have known. I
You
would
would have
never
never known.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I was so fascinated because if you look and I'm gonna be the devil's advocate kind of social brain right now.
Yeah.
If you look at, the dancers, the topless dancers, the whatever, go-go dancers or whatever you wanna call throughout life, showgirls, etcetera. You're
Mhm.
like, "Oh, that person's dancing topless,
Uh-huh.
Paris, Montreal,
Mhm.
whatever, Bahamas."
Mhm.
You might have preconceived, notions about who that person is, and that is not who you were.
Well, it wasn't, you mean being topless, being a showgirl?
Yeah, you were
Yeah.
very modest.
Yeah. I was a young virgin. I
You
was
were a young
virginal.
virgin out
The
there.
last thing that my mentor said when I left is don't dance topless.
Yeah,
It
don't
it
dance
will
topless.
it will keep you from being the dancer you can be. Yes, the showgirls danced less, but we're talking multi-million dollar productions. We're talking
Mhm.
huge with, Bob Mackie and Falco and Pete Menefee costumes and, the most beautiful thing. And I'll tell you, the first time I saw the show in Montreal, my first feeling is all of a sudden all this stuff is coming at you as the show opens, and it's so glittering and sparkling and dazzling and encapsulating and just like the whoa of it all. And then all of a sudden you see that they're showgirls and they're topless and they're beautiful costumes. And then by the second number, you forget.
Yep,
You don't even focus on it or think about it. And
yep,
pretty much that's how those shows affected people.
yeah,
There's so much to look at. And by the time I ended my career at the Stardust, at the Ali Lido show at the Lido de Paris with Siegfried and Roy, who sold out every single night, that 1,000-seat theater, every
right.
single show, every single night. No seats available. By the time you get to a show of that magnitude, that was Miss Bluebell and Don Arden, you realize that, people are holding their breath. There's so much going there are volcanoes erupting, and there's rainfall, and there are elephants on stage, and there's magic, and I mean, there's so much, and you would think that people would still enjoy that. But we have a media saturated society now who needs more thrills and spills. I guess they theme park consciousness because Cirque du Soleil, who are primarily Olympians
Yeah.
performing, um, are the thing now, especially in Vegas and in the world. There's very little cabaret left. Very little.
I actually felt a twinge of, melancholy, almost, sadness as I was reading, imagining those places that you inhabited, my favorite to go out to a restaurant is a half round booth. There's something so magical
King's
about a half.
King's booth, yeah.
Oh, just
Yeah.
heaven. They still
Uh-huh.
have them at, like, Morton's and stuff like that,
Yeah,
and, I was just having such melancholy thinking about these places going away,
I know.
and that old Hollywood, as you described, being ushered to the front,
Oh, yeah,
being, like, total VIP,
yeah,
everything paid for,
yes.
and
Just to be
it's
there.
just yeah, just to be there. Like, you were like it was like, "Here they are. The
The
showgirls are
showgirls are
here,
here.
right to the front."
Yeah, you put them down front, you comp them, everything, but we had to dress for that. If we went, say we wanted to go see a show at, maybe the Dunes. We wanna go see Casino de Paris. We would put on a gown, put on some eyelashes, put on some makeup. If there were 2 or more of us, we walk to the front, we work at the Stardust. "Come on in, ladies, let's see what we have. We'll have the best seat in the house for you." It was automatic. It was
Yeah.
automatic. And I remember going to work and the managers of the casino, Al Sachs and Herb Tobin, were right after Rosenthal, Lefty Rosenthal, who the movie Casino is about, and it's very accurate.
Is
Um,
it?
oh, it's perfectly accurate. It's the only one that is, and they don't
Really?
depict showgirls much in his girlfriend was the Sharon Stone character was a showgirl. But anyway, if I remember the managers coming backstage and saying, um, to the cast, "If you decide to come through the front door of the casino, you need to be dressed." These were back in the days when people dressed up to go to casinos. They didn't wear
Yeah.
T-shirts instead of a backgammon table or a craps table. Um, and otherwise, use the back door. Well, the back door wasn't so glamorous because you had to pass by all the elephants who were crapping at the back door and the cages of the animals that are in the show, and you have to get through Siegfried and Roy's magical stuff in your jeans,
Right.
in 1970, I mean, 70, 79, because it was almost 1980. And it was not so glamorous. That was our life. You come in through the tracks of the circus. It's what it looks
Yeah.
like. So it's quite a juxtaposition from who we would be if we came in the front of the casino and who we were if we came in the back.
But don't you think that that's kind of just a mirror of, your paycheck, which you move forward, you made a whole lot more
We make
money,
good money. Oh, yeah.
good money. But uh, like you said at the beginning, sharing a room with 4 girls or an apartment, and then all of a sudden you're with, going to Kenny Rogers, and you're seeing these huge, you're meeting Mick Jagger,
Yeah.
um, and you could be who was the other guy
Well,
in the Howard Hughes
oh, yeah. Howard Hughes in the elevator.
in the elevator. So you have all these experiences of this very high, but at the same time, it's kind of like you're watching the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders, where the football players are making $100 million, and the cheerleaders who are equally, I mean, unbelievably talented, dancing those leg kicks and everything, and they had
Yeah.
to just fight a lawsuit to make $1,500. I think it was per performance. Do you feel like, looking back at that, like we were the thing, we were the it?
Yeah, we were. And we made a decent salary. We certainly made enough to own a home or raise a family if we wanted to. Um, but it wasn't like we were all getting rich. We were
Right.
hardworking, middle class people. But we did make good money.
Yeah.
And we did have good contracts, and we did have great insurance in the big hotels back then. So we did have all of that. And that's kind of why people want to wind down in Las Vegas back in those days. You want to wind your career down in Vegas because those were the cushy jobs.
Gotcha.
I'm not saying that we didn't make good money everywhere we worked because there was a standard. In 1969, the Rockettes did 4 shows a day, 7 days a week for $150 a week.
A week.
But that was decent money,
Right.
but 4 shows a day, 7 days a week, that's your
I mean,
life. That's your whole life.
all my brain keeps seeing is like ACL tears and
Oh,
hip flexor issues, and all the things.
no.
And one of the things which really blew my mind, um was you were at one time, I think it was in Paris, where you were like the stand-in person when
I was
people
a
would
sweet
vacate.
girl.
Yeah, and you had to wear other people's outfits that could have been 6 foot and had a size 10 shoe or a size 6 shoe, and you had to they're like, "Wear
Yeah.
it." I'm like, "Why wouldn't they just give her own outfit that she would wear?" It's crazy.
Well, they did more of that 10 years later. They
Mhm.
did more of that even 7 or 8 years later, and depending on the production, but those costumes by Falco that were in the Lido de Paris in Paris at the original, Lido were so expensive back then, and those shows were so expensive. I mean, that's another stage that had so many hydraulics and ice rinks that came up and horses are having jousting on stage. I mean, it was a big deal. So for a swing person to come in, and a swing person is a person who fills in for whoever's on vacation. So there were 10 dancing nudes in that show, so I had to learn 10 parts. I had to learn whoever's part, and in Europe, people tend to take holiday for a month or
Yeah,
2.
yeah.
So we did
How
work
nice.
7 nights a week, but then you'd
Right.
take a month or 2 off. That's how it worked there. So I'd be in there a month or 2, and I did get my own part after I was a swing for about 4 months. So I
Yeah.
really only had to do about 4 different, but there were misfits, and then getting to understudy the principal in that one number with Buddy Vest and my
Yep.
best friend, that was the highlight of my dance career because Buddy Vest was amazing. He was in Sweet Charity on Broadway and in the movie with Shirley MacLaine. He was a Ron Lewis dancer. He was so amazing. So to be able to dance with this dance legend in a principal number and to be able to understudy that, I would have worn anything to
Right.
dance with him.
Even to cut
That's
your eye open, which happened
well,
once. I mean,
pins in my eyes. No, I wouldn't go that far, but it was such, there are some things that just overshadow the hard things and
yeah.
the greatness of that. But the evil seahorse head was not a good story. And then to
No.
find out that it had never fit anyone,
Right.
yeah,
It's taken everybody out. I mean, that thing
yeah,
was humongous.
it
I
was
think that a lot of people fail to realize, um, for the kicking up to your nose without bending your back, without bending your knees, while holding a
yes,
20 plus pound thing on top of your head, and not the athleticism alone is mind blowing. But when you're
yeah,
sitting in the seats, the stands, watching, it's
yeah,
just like, oh, this is nice. But
yeah,
to really dial in
what it
to the
takes.
athleticism on stage and the dance and the technique, and you being an actress
Yeah,
and bringing that to so many of their performances, not
oh, yeah,
just dancing, but acting,
oh, yeah.
was really something different than the other girls were doing even.
It's true. Well, dancers tend to be either dancers in any company, any dance company tend to be either technicians or performers. And when you get both, that's certainly the creme de la creme. And there are those that have extraordinary dance skills technically and are fantastic performers. And they're great beauties. So those were usually the leads. Those were usually the principal dancers. Um, but generally, there's a distinction between the two. And showgirls were performers because remember, we are the ones that wore the original. Um, uh, e- each showgirl often had an original costume, just one big, beautiful, amazing costume. So they were the ones that were different. And then the bluebells or the Meredyth dancers or the line of covered dancers all wore the same thing and had to be
Mm.
more precision, like the Rockettes. So there's a distinction between the showgirls. The showgirls really needed to be the actresses. We really
Yeah.
had to, project this incredible persona to go with these phenomenal costumes. I
Now
mean,
you
that were
talk
white sable. I mean, they were real fur. They were
yeah,
beautiful.
and feathers and the whole thing. It's just
Trying
unbelievable.
to make it look as simple. But,
Oh,
the
yeah.
choreographers would design around the costumes. Like, there was a pink hat number that had these huge pointed pink hats that were, like, almost 30 pounds, and one of the girls quit at the Stardust, rehearsals because she couldn't manage the hat. She hadn't been experienced enough or built the muscles in her neck and
Yeah.
her body to manage that. Shirley and I slipped them on with ease. Boom.
But also at the same time, you at one point weighed 115 pounds, so a 30-pound headdress is like a third of your body weight.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And it wasn't just the headdresses. It would be a headdress plus wings of
Yeah,
huge feathers. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Or more.
So when you kind of go through the book and talk about some of your relationships with men,
Mhm.
um, outside of those relationships, being in this, arena, wearing a thong, being topless, being
Mhm.
around a bunch of men, did you experience what we would call today sexual harassment? Which it was then too, but, it was just part of the program, right?
Yeah.
Did you go through that, or did like I because I didn't
I
pick that up.
I didn't. There wasn't much of that going on. there was objectification. We were objectified, certainly. That's why it doesn't exist much anymore because women have learned they don't have to do that. They don't need to do that. That's it's even if it's at that level of classiness and beauty, women don't have to do that anymore. Women
Mhm.
have made great strides in equalization and tried really hard. I mean, there's always a backward pull, but it's a different world now. If you go to a show, for example, I have seen Awakenings in Las Vegas at the Wynn, which I highly recommend. 3 times now. They keep upgrading it. It was Siegfried and Roy's old managers, one of the producers. And I noticed that the costuming is still brief and still magnificent, but women aren't as skinny as they used to be. In the 60s and 70s, women had to be very thin in the shows, very thin. That was the thing, and
Yeah.
that's being objectified. So that's not, and they aren't as tall as we were. So I think that dancers have been more of a range of types have been embraced, and that's
Yeah.
a wonderful thing to see. I like that. I like seeing that they have women with curves, and they have women that are short, and they have women that are tall, and they have so it's a little of everything. So and now if they want a nude effect, it's some kind of bodysuit
Yeah, you can
costume.
still create that same energy,
Yeah, you
yeah.
can exactly. So, you don't see much of that anymore unless it's an exotic dancer in a strip club or something. There are a few shows that have showgirls. Dita Von Teese has a fabulous show in
Yeah,
Vegas. I think she's in Europe right now. She's in Paris, but, she rented the Jubilee costumes, which still exist, the Bob Mackie
really.
costumes for her show, and she put the boys in them too. She put the boys in the big feathers and the headdresses. So she mixed it up,
I love
and
her.
the girls were topless because it's a burlesque show.
Yeah.
But she upgraded it to a burlesque showgirl show because she always dreamed of being a showgirl. But I've met her and she's 5'4".
Is
So
she really? So you
only
and I are the same height, I'm 5'9" as well.
yeah, well, I
So
was.
yeah, right, I probably am 5'8" by
I'm
this point.
5'8" now.
But when I read that you weighed 115 pounds, I about passed out.
Well, I about passed out being that too. It wasn't healthy. And it wasn't realistic, but that was what that producer wanted.
Yeah,
That producer Miss Bluebell was a little bit different. She liked to see girls with curves, and probably because those stages were so big that
yeah.
she'd rather see a curvy showgirl. But Don Arden liked that stick straight
Wave.
principal dancer. So all
Yeah.
the principal dancers were really thin. But Miss Bluebell was kind of the opposite of that. She said, "No, I actually prefer a curve on
Thank
stage."
thank
So
goodness, because you were on your like, that you couldn't have done it. I mean, you could probably have done anything at this point reading your book, but it wouldn't have been a good idea to keep doing it, let's put it that way, on
no,
that trajectory.
no. No, and I was too inexperienced to know that a diet pill is not good for you.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that producer was just dishing out those, prescriptions, not himself, but he had a doctor doing it to the acrobats for pain who were living on pain. And some of them were taking pain pills for their bodies and diet pills. So
which
that
yeah,
was that was a nightmare. I'm glad it was less than 3 months of my life, but I'm certain it affected so many parts of my life that I never did it again. Never did anything like that again,
yeah,
ever.
how far we've grown. One of the things that I thought was so interesting, which you just touched on briefly, but I grabbed onto, um, is that you could have gone and partied with Elvis as much as you wanted, and it was just not you didn't care.
And then
You
I
didn't
got to hear all
care.
the stories though, and a lot of them were taken out of the book because my publisher is very risk averse. And oh no, be careful with this and be careful with this and take this out and change this name. A lot of names are changed in my book. Not the celebrities, but every one of the celebrity stories, except for the one about Mick and Bianca Jagger. That was all true. and
Yeah.
that was certainly not damaging, it was just what it
They're
was.
just turds,
But
whatever.
there were Elvis stories and Prince stories that had been expanded on in the book that were taken out so as not to damage what people already probably know about them.
Yeah.
But, my publisher didn't wanna get sued, so I
Yeah.
took a lot out. I took a lot out.
Yeah. I just find it so funny. You're like, "I coulda went up there, but it wasn't my jam." You were a Beatles girl,
Yeah, I said to my roommate, "If the Beatles ever come in, call me. Call me right away."
and you got to see
I
Ike
didn't
and
care
Tina
about
on
meeting Elvis at all.
it's so weird, and you got to see good, but you got to see Ike and Tina on stage. You got to see
Oh,
Kenny Rogers before he was even Kenny
it was the
Rogers.
house band at the Union Plaza, the house band, and that was 1971, and I remember all the dancers on the strip would show up at 1 a.m. when they were finished working, and the house band started at midnight. And it was Kenny Rogers in the first edition. We went there to dance after work because you're wired after 2 shows. You need
Right,
to burn
yeah.
off some energy. That was normal, and we were all so young. So we would go and dance to the house band at the Union Plaza on the very top floor overlooking all of Las Vegas, and it was Kenny Rogers in the first edition. Who knew? We knew they
Who
were good.
Yeah,
We
but
knew
who
they were
knew? So you had clarity at such a young age, um, that you knew people were kind of your guardian angels. As we go through the book, you're like, "Oh, and that person," like Mother, the 2 guys upstairs that are still your
yeah,
friends. You
yeah,
were able to recognize, when you're tripping on LSD and that person comes and saves you off the side of the road,
yeah.
"Buy this book."
I
Um,
know. I know. I know.
you were
Can't
able
make that
to
stuff up.
you can't make it up. You were able to recognize these guardian angels throughout your life. Is that in hindsight, or was that at the present time you were able to recognize that?
I knew in the moment.
Did
And I
you?
think that my saving grace in my whole life and my protection was my ability to be grateful all the time. That was everything. I recognized that goodness being there for me whenever I was at a low point or disappointed or hurt or stupid or embarrassed. There was always someone there loving me. And my brother, who's 2 years younger than me, just finished the book and he said, "Do you know why you had so many guardian angels in your life?" And I said, "I was very lucky." He said, "No, it's you. You attracted those people. You were that person to people. You still are." He said, "You are the common denominator there." And I thanked him. I thought that was a really sweet thing to say, but I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know that I was generating anything any more special than anybody else, really. I was
Yeah,
just
but
following my dreams.
when you have gratitude, that frequency brings in more things to be grateful for. As I can tell through your book, you get more yoga-y, more meditation-y.
Oh, yeah,
I could hear your language become very much in
the
alignment with
spiritual.
yeah, spirituality. Um
It's
but
true.
I think, like, recognizing, that brought those things I don't know, or maybe it became a point of attraction where you noticed it and it the normal person, it might not have you might not have clocked it, but you clocked it. You're like, "Okay, and that, and I
Yeah,
got it, and I see it."
yeah,
Whereas maybe some other people wouldn't have clocked it. It would have became, like, just the way things are. Uh but I love the way that you embraced it and you didn't take it for granted, someone letting you stay with them, someone helping you out for a few months, someone sitting with you in a hard time. So many of us take those things for granted. It's just the way it is, and you never did that. You clocked it, you appreciated it, and you held on to it. Clearly, it became a part of your very clear memory of what your life was.
yeah, yeah, and that I think it started when I read that book at 12 years old when I was babysitting, The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. I was changed when I read that book. It changed me. It changed everything in my life. And I remember, the woman I was babysitting for giving me that book. She goes, "I've read it 3 times, you take it." And she gave me the book, and I kept it with me always. And I adopted the things that he introduced in the book into my psyche. I
Wow.
decided that would be my way of being, is changing any negative into a positive and finding the positive. So I had a self-help book at 12 that
Yeah.
changed my life, and that was the greatest gift of all to have, because my parents were good people at heart. They were just young, and disappointed and a mess, but they were good people at heart, but they weren't passing on anything spiritual to me.
Yeah.
My
They were
grandmother,
surviving.
they were surviving. They were parenting, providing, and surviving, and, I think that finding that on my own was probably one of the greatest gifts of my life, and I also feel that when I wrote the book, that I was this older, there were 2 voices in my book. There's the young girl growing up through all of these experiences, and there's the older woman looking back
Mhm.
and putting it together into some kind of a thread of spirituality and being in the flow of life.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that the 2 voices do stand out in the book. It's not
Um,
just one voice.
I haven't gotten to it yet. I still have a few more pages to go. Are your parents still with us?
No, no, I lost them very young. My
Okay.
dad
And
passed when I
also,
was
do
63,
you
my mom.
think you could have written this book while they were still alive?
No, no,
Yeah.
and, my publisher required me to take out 30,000 words. After my literary manager sold the book to McFarland, they required it to be memoir size, which is 60 to 100,000 words. I didn't know that. It was about 130,000 words. So I had to take out a lot of childhood stories, and that's what they requested. They said, let's just encapsulate the childhood stuff early in the book, so it's a foundation. It's certainly a necessity in a bio or a memoir. You need to know where this person came from to know where they've gone, and that's never, ever been more clearly demonstrated than in Viola Davis's new book, Finding Me. Oh my god. If you wanna read a bio that will blow your mind, aside
Yeah.
from my book, my book's fun by comparison.
Wow.
Hers is, unbelievable. But I took out 30,000 words, and in those 30,000 words, there was definitely things that I struggled with. Stories that in my 2 writing classes, the year before I was published, I struggled to write even. And one of my teachers was really good at giving you prompts and having you go really deep, and the other one had been published 5 times and was very good at structuring your book. So I had really good balance of training for a year by those 2 teachers who I studied with simultaneously. But the one that had me go really deep had me tell some stories, uh, that I'd never told anyone, ever.
Hmm.
And I think that's why the book took so long to write. It's because I couldn't get past 12 years old. I couldn't get past those stories. But interestingly, once I wrote the stories, and everybody in the writing class was crying, everybody, including the teacher, when I read the story in class. Um, and then she used it as an example of what you need to do to draw a reader in is to share the grit. Ultimately, I took those stories out, but just writing those stories is where I found my voice
Yeah.
and where I healed.
Do you
And
think
where
that
my
there's
broth
a
I have a couple brothers that wouldn't even, well, they're not talking to me right now because they don't even like what I did write about my parents. My other brother that experienced that with me is fine. He goes, "We lived through that." And the other
yeah.
ones who didn't are like, "Oh, how could you write that?" Well, have you ever read a memoir?
Yeah.
People
Do
tell their
you
stories.
do you think that the way I'm looking at it possibly is the making of a showgirl book?
I have a lot of theories about that. One being, and because I know so many of the stories of the showgirls that I've been close to all these years and still am, and hearing their stories, which is to me the most interesting thing about a person. I'm an
That's
acting coach.
yeah,
I want to know where your pain is. I want to
yeah,
know that's your gold. That's where we bring our ability to life to
yeah,
perform and share and unite with other people. And I know how much it heals someone to really tell their story because we do it. We do it in my acting classes all the time. But to answer your question, I remember seeing a comic strip once, Meredith, and it had these girls all dressed up and in these really short dresses and their legs and they were all fluffed and buffed and it was a cartoon and somebody was in a car driving by these girls and there were 4 or 5 of them on the street and they said, "Oh, hi, girls with unavailable dads." Uh-oh,
yeah.
uh-oh, uh-oh, I just lost you. See if I
I'm
can get you. Oh,
I'm
there we
here still.
go. Okay.
But yeah,
Um,
I
yeah,
it
so maybe because that is a common theme with showgirls.
yeah,
That is a
making
common
of a showgirl. I mean, we have the story of who you are.
mhm,
How'd you get there? Like you say, you give a very feathered, buffed out version of your childhood.
yeah,
And now speaking with you, it was like it was this, it was I think that if I had a say in it, if I were if I were paying your bills, I'd be like, I want the making of a showgirl
yeah,
because isn't that the meat and the potatoes of a person? Like we see who you are, we got it, but how'd you get there? The
yeah,
being the oldest daughter of 5 kids, growing up in Illinois, because your story is not unique, as you well know.
mhm.
It's a tried
No,
and true, I'm sure, recipe. Um,
and I think that's
and
the most interesting thing about any person is
100%.
what was the grist of their mill that made them great?
Yep.
What did they experience? What drove them to their greatness?
Yeah.
That's the most interesting thing about a person, I think, is their story, and everybody has one. That's the real I've been teaching acting for 33 years. I've been an actor for a long time, and listening to people's stories, there is not one person that doesn't have some grit. I don't know anybody that goes, "Oh, I had a perfect childhood," or no,
And if
everybody
they do,
has
they're boring.
something. Everybody has something they had to work through. And I have another theory is that we choose our parents. A
I do
spiritual
too.
theory. I believe we choose our parents so that we
I
can
just
evolve.
I just told my dad that this weekend. He's like, I go, Dad, I chose you. He goes, No, you didn't. I go, Trust, I did. Yeah, I know
It's
you don't get that, but I
co-creation.
did. I did, trust me. I also see that in your comedy, being a comedian, being
Yeah.
an actor. A lot of funny people have very difficult
Oh,
pasts. We
yes.
work through, we're the funny ones. We make things light. I realized that I was at a friend's house a couple years ago and it hit me and they started arguing, the husband and wife, and I started, hello my sweetheart, hello my, you know what I mean, like I'm like, mayday, make them laugh, and I saw that in your book
Oh,
about
yeah.
how you had that, you could carry a room, you could make people shift their energy with your sense of humor, and I'm like, I recognize that, I see you, girl, I see, I
I
see
think
it in
people
there.
from big families do that too.
Yeah,
I think that people from large families vie for attention.
yeah,
And if your parents aren't super skilled, and mine were too young to be skilled at, generating enough attention for all 5 kids, which they didn't, then we vie for attention in one way or another. And in our family, it was about who could be the goofiest and the funniest and silliest. And, um, I wanted to play. I
yeah,
wanted to play. I wanted to but I really found my healing and my saving grace outside the family. I found it in the
yeah.
theater and in the dance studio. That was where I found myself and
And
found my own happiness.
and your backbone and your feet and your legs and your everything, which I find fascinating that the timing of this book is very part and parcel to what the movie with Jamie Lee Curtis and Pamela Anderson just came out. Um,
With a similar
how,
title.
huh?
With a similar title,
With a very similar title.
which is not
How,
real at all.
yeah, what do you
Not
think about that movie?
well, I've done a lot of interviews and talked about that, and I just had an article come out, and here is my thought. Dancers don't like that movie. Showgirls don't like that movie because nobody that lived the first of all, nobody's a showgirl at 57. Nobody. You couldn't do it. And none
Right.
of the shows ever charged you for a torn costume or docked your pay. I mean, none of that's real. Nobody would have given up a child or let a child sit in a car with a Game Boy in Nevada heat and do 2 shows. Nobody would have done that. They would have been able to afford a babysitter. They would have been able to afford to have them at home, and people didn't give up their kids to be a showgirl. You didn't have to. You made enough money to make it work. And then Jamie Lee's character, nobody was a lush, nobody was a gambler. I mean, there may have been mild versions of some of that, but you couldn't do that and maintain a job. You
You're an
couldn't
athlete.
be you could not be, you know, whatever she a lush, indeed. I mean, none of that's realistic. But here's what I have to say that's good about the movie. First of all, it's a $2 million movie. And Gia Coppola, here's my ultimate feeling, and this is why I want a limited series, probably with a new title, is that showgirls deserve a huge budget. We deserve all the dazzling, sparkling glamour you can give to a production. And to shoot a showgirl movie in Vegas, which is very expensive to shoot in, at $2 million is nearly impossible. So they were doing guerrilla style. They weren't paying for locations and getting permits. They went out with a handheld camera in the streets or on a rooftop and shot
Yeah.
a movie, and the script was the weakest link. But the
Yeah.
strongest link were Pamela Anderson's charisma. We love her. She's likable, she's relatable, she's beautiful, and we're drawn into her charisma. We wanna watch her. That was one of the best things they did, and the other one was just to have Jamie Lee Curtis on a shoot, who has turned herself into the most risk-taking, daring character actress in everything she does now, getting Oscars to prove it for Everything Everywhere All at Once. If you've never seen her play that character, that was a real stretch from the brilliant, beautiful young leading lady that she always was. So here she is taking raw, gritty risks with characters. But did that character ever exist in my world? I don't know anybody in Vegas that ever worked with anybody like that. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't Annettes in the world, but they weren't showgirls.
It wasn't your experience. This isn't what
No,
you were seeing athletes being treated
no.
well, VIP,
Yeah,
like the whole
they were
9 yards.
classically trained dancers who
Yeah.
had brains enough to get there, and not and none of so all of that was fictitious. None of that is real. Nobody sits down in costumes, by the way.
I was gonna say, I was gonna
It's
ask
not
you, how the hell do you sit down for 5? No, it's not
no.
happening.
No, and you're constantly changing, and we had dressers for each row of 5 girls or 5
Yeah,
dancers. We had a personal dresser who maintained those multi-million dollar costumes and maintained everything about them, and from cleanliness to expert, fishnet, uh, repair. We never had a hole in a fishnet tight or anything. I mean, these were other highly trained professionals and highly paid professionals, our dressers, our wardrobe
yeah.
people. So that wasn't realistic at all.
And now you're one of the n if not one of the, um, number 1, acting coaches in Hollywood. Stranger Things, This Is Us,
Yeah.
you have a numerous movies, TV, where
Oh,
you're,
constantly.
yeah,
We've got a
doing the
student
thing still.
on the new show, The Penguin. If you haven't seen The Penguin with Colin
Mm,
Farrell, who just got the Critics' Choice and the Golden Globe for that role. The kid that's the star with him, who's playing a teenager, he's actually not a teenager anymore. He's 10 years older than it being a teenager. Renzi Feliz is our student. So he's doing quite well. So we have, and the show Arcane, two of our people are on, Reed Shannon and Haley Steinfeld. So, and Haley's new movie Sinners is a big hit. So yeah, we've been very fortunate to have trained some extraordinary talent and still do. So that's just so fun. It's
That
so
is
fun
amazing.
to pass the torch.
What an amazing life. You have done it all. I didn't even mention, um, you were, worked in the Playboy,
That's
club
the
for a while as well. Never you were invited to be a
a playmate.
centerfold,
Mhm.
but declined. Again, back to the discipline.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
have been on that cover. I would have said yes. I would have been just by the nose, but not Diane. Discipline and self-worth and courage every single
Oh,
time. Just such an amazing, amazing story.
well,
And
I'm certainly not judging it, but it just wasn't for me. That
yeah.
yeah, that just wasn't for me. But,
And your story of Blaze, I felt like I was dropped off of a cliff in that damn chapter. You dropped me off of a cliff. I will never forgive you for Blaze. Read the
that's
book.
my
I'm not
favorite
giving
story in the book, Meredith,
I
because
fell off a cliff, Diane. Stop it.
oh, I
I
know.
literally I'm not kidding. I sat in this room right here reading it right to my side here, and you dropped me off a cliff, and I am not going to forgive you for
Oh,
Blaze's story
it's
because
my
you
favorite
felt
story in the book.
same. You I like literally I fell in love in like 3 pages and then I fell off a cliff. So there's that. Um your Smith had me dead in DC. I've never been angrier at a person I've never met.
I know.
Furious. I mean,
I
this book just
know.
takes you on the roller coaster. Yeah,
Yeah.
all the things. And
You know,
um
the
I
reason
knew your dad passed away. I don't know why I just asked. I should have asked if your mom was still with us. I knew your dad had passed,
yeah,
because he didn't live out his dreams. So I
no.
don't even know why I asked you that. Um, but all of your characters, who are real, all of the people in your Diana's verse, um, are just they're just amazing. They're warm, they're real, you could touch them. You've made them real to me. You gave me a pathway that even though I can't go back and relive, it still reminds me to be courageous and be true to myself and be disciplined in my decisions and not be led by my nose just because the wind is blowing or someone asks me to or whatever. Like really sit with it and see what it is that I want to do because that's what you did at 17 freaking years old, for whatever reason and my voice matters to me and that's what I need to listen to and your book taught me that and I appreciate you.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that that's what you're left with, and I hear that from a lot of people, that they're left with a sense of wanting to be more courageous,
Yeah.
wanting to have more moxie, you know? And I'm glad because I didn't always feel like that's what was happening at the time,
I'm
but I'm
sure.
really glad that that has inspired people to want to be courageous and disciplined. I just feel like it was growing up.
Yeah. You
It
just
was
thought it was
real
normal.
I was just growing up, and that's what we do, but I do remember when I was a senior in high school and we used to have our guidance counselor, meetings before, we chose a college or whatever, and I remember saying to my guidance counselor, I said, "Well, I just want you to know I'm gonna be an actress, so I'm gonna follow whatever path I need to make that happen." And she goes, "I don't have any doubts about you at all, and I know you're
Really?
gonna do it."
Really?
Meeting over. That's all that she needed to hear. Yeah.
Well, she's a gem because I'll tell you this right now. I have a friend, her daughter got like 36 on the ACT, and she's
Uh-huh.
like, "You're not gonna go to any like good school." 36 is like a perfect score. And she's still like, hey, yeah, I don't know. She got a Harvard, Yale, I mean, Notre Dame. I mean, you got a good one because they're not all like that.
Did.
So,
I did, I did. And,
especially back in the day.
most kids at that age don't know what they wanna do. That's the norm. most kids are too young at that age. So, I think some of us are old souls. Some of us came in with a knowing, with an awareness, with a longer list of accomplishments and things to grasp onto at a young age. And I've certainly seen my share of prodigies as an acting coach
Oh,
and
I
as a
can
dancer.
imagine.
I mean, you see people with skills that there is there is no explanation for a 4-year-old to be a fashion designer like this little Max guy that's in New
Isn't he
York.
amazing?
I'm like, "That's a prodigy," and I've encountered a few prodigies too, and I'll tell
Yeah.
you, they did not have easy lives,
Well, I have to
in
say
addition to their gifts.
the fact that you put yourself out there at such a young age, there's just something that was living inside of you. I call that I'm a life coach, intuitive, psychic medium as well, which I mean, that's just I just love to do this too.
It goes
Um,
with the territory. Yeah.
yeah, right. Like, I'm just interested in humanity and humans and
Yep.
their stories. Um, is I call that a fast manifester. Someone that just like wants to have like over and like you just went from here to here to here to here. You're like, I want to touch all the things in this life. I want to live 100 lifetimes in this life. I'm going to be a comedian. I'm going to be a Playboy person. I'm going to like, you're just over there like living 100 lives and
Yeah,
just soaking it all up. You're like, I'm not doing this in 100 lifetimes. We're going to do this right now. I'm
yeah,
checking these boxes right now.
still doing
And
it,
it's,
still doing
and,
it.
and now an author too, to boot.
Well, my new goal is to have a limited series, and I don't mind changing the title, but my dream is to have someone like Shonda Rhimes produce it. I mean, I want
Mm,
the biggest budget with the best producer and somebody with a showrunner that can write a script that's gonna knock it out of the park. So now I'm aligning myself with the people that can do that for me.
yeah.
So there's always something. It
Whenever
doesn't
I
stop.
I did a video on TikTok, it went very viral, like millions of views. And it was just me yelling into the camera going, there's no end game.
No.
You're never gonna be done. As soon as you get there, you're gonna want something else. And as soon as you get there, you're gonna want something else. So stop thinking you're getting anywhere because we're not getting anywhere. We're just keep going and going and
It's true, that's true, but I have learned, I guess it's discipline again, to stop and be in it. Just
celebrate it too.
be in it.
Yeah.
So now if I've been writing too much or I've been interviewing too much or I've been traveling too much or not doing enough, I want balance. I will
Yeah,
seek
balance.
balance. So if I have a day where I can say, I'm not going to do anything today, which is really rare, but I had one. I had one. I think it was Sunday. And I was just like, I'm just going to be with nothing today.
Yeah, just
Just be okay with nothing. Because if I don't recharge, I won't have what I need to do the next phase. And grasping those moments to decompress and to recharge our batteries are so important. And
yeah.
that goes with my spiritual nature.
Yeah.
Is
I've
to
started to realize when I feel that imbalance, I feel like I'm being chased by a bear. I've talked about it on here before, where you're
yeah,
like, you start to kind of like get buzzy and your heart
to
kind
not
of, and I'm
breathe.
like, yeah,
Yes,
yeah. And I'm
yes,
like, you're not being chased by a bear. You just need to go for a walk, have a glass of water,
that's right.
like bring it back to stasis because you
Exactly.
can get nuts.
Or go exercise a little. Yeah,
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 totally.
yeah.
Well,
It's keeping it all in balance.
yeah, thank you so much for being on here. I don't want to take too much of your I could literally talk to you for a month about your book, but I want people to actually buy it instead of me telling them everything that's in the dang thing.
Well, I love the things that you brought up, Meredith. I really appreciate your insight and the shared things that we just discovered. Thank you.
Where did I put it? Oh,
I
here
think
it
so.
is.
Great.
So it's The Real
It's
Last
the
Showgirl.
last real showgirl.
Yeah, The Last Real Show. I'm reading it backwards in the thing. The Last Real Showgirl, my sequined 70s on stage, Diane Christiansen. With this beautiful face on the cover here with I don't even know how many sets of eyelashes. My brain can't even wrap around 3 sets of eyelashes on this book. There's beautiful photos inside the entire
Yeah,
book that take you right back to her experiences, the people. the stories of celebrities, the stories of the locations. When you were in Montreal, I was in Montreal with you. When you were in Paris, I was there with you. Maybe that's my empath part of self, but you brought me there with all those Parisian baked goods for the entire month. I gained 15 pounds with you.
I
But
tried to
yeah,
make it cinematic and sensory. I like the sensory aspects of life. And I
yes.
think that keeping the sensory parts of it alive help people on the journey with me.
Yeah, because you're right there with you. This I got on Amazon. I'm sure wherever you buy books, if it's not there, you can ask them to order it. Tell them to get it on the shelves. If it's your local bookstore, go check that out.
You can buy
And
it on the website, thelastrealshowgirl.com.
thelastrealshowgirl.com. Perfect. And please come back if you get that mini series. I would love to have you.
Thank you,
Um,
and I will.
when you get that mini series, we're gonna
Yes,
manifest here. We're gonna
yes,
manifest together. When you get your mini series, you're gonna
yes.
come back here and we're gonna talk about the mini series and
Okay.
all the good stuff with that.
All right, and when I'm in Chicago, I'll look you up.
Oh my God, please do. I can't wait. Thank you so much for being on today. Everybody, I'll see you guys next week. Diane Christiansen, the last real showgirl. I have a star in my presence. I'll see you guys here next week. Thank you, Diane.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. If you would like to connect on a more personal level, head over to meredythwillits.com or on Instagram at Meredyth with a Y for behind-the-scene footage and outtakes. Please subscribe and come back each week for more Meredyth with a Y. Thanks again for listening.